efficient fuel procurement strategies. This is the topic of today's episode of AVIAPRENEURS podcast. This is Adnan Baranbo from Dubai, and my guest today has grown up in an aviation fuel family. His father, Mr. Moller, has sold aviation fuel for a good part of his life. He is the president and the founder of Fuelerlinx, an aviation fuel planning software that helps aircraft operators plan their aviation fuel purchases in the most economical way. Good day, Kevin. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
We're talking to you in Los Angeles now, right?
It's the evening in Los Angeles, coming to you live from LA. Yes, everything is fine here. The weather's nice. It looks beautiful in Dubai. At the window, your back looks beautiful.
Indeed, we're blessed to be in this part of the world. I love this city. When was the last time you visited?
Great. 5 years ago.
I look forward.
5 years ago at Midland. I need to come out there again. It's a beautiful city. I always have fun there.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Kevin Moller, you're the founder and president of Fuelerlinx and Linux. And let's start with fuel. Fuel is the largest direct operating cost for any aircraft. And currently, with the fuel prices skyrocketing, it's more essential now more than ever to plan fuel purchases in the most economical and in the most efficient way. And this is what Fuelerlinx promises. It helps aircraft operators to plan their fuel purchases and their tankering, so they know how much fuel they buy at each airport, from what supplier, and at what price. How can Fuelerlinx achieve that?
Well, so what we do, so Fuelerlinx back in 2008, when I first started it, I was working in arbitrage and contract fuel. And it was very difficult for me to receive wholesale cost pricing sheets from different vendors, finding out where my best price at every market is across every IKO that I sold fuel at, and then distributing that. So what we did sort of slowly over time, over the last 14 years, is to develop relationships with vendors that push their wholesale pricing or their retail pricing into a marketplace. We do about $1.2 billion a year in fuel through the system currently. We're made up of most of the private 91 operators and charter operators in the U.S., the heavy iron that use our system. The way we can achieve savings effectively is much like kayak, when you go and you price or Google Flights or whatever you use to go price a flight on a commercial airliner. By putting in a city pair and querying multiple vendors, instead of looking at one or two suppliers, we're looking at 15 to 20 suppliers that are bringing their pricing into our marketplace that's specific to an operator. They choose the best option on a field, and then we take that data and we take it a step further by running a tankering algorithm on it. So Fuelerlinx basically will take all those different quotes, find your cheapest option at every airfield. It'll find the volume break. So sometimes if you buy an extra gallon, 501 gallons or 1,001 gallons, you might get a 5-cent break on your price per gallon. So our system will look across all those volume breaks, find the best slot. We'll then look at the winds of loft data. We'll run a flight plan. We'll look at the winds of loft data. We'll look at the optimized altitude and routing to fly your aircraft. And we'll tell you exactly, the algorithm will tell you exactly how much fuel to put in the aircraft. Because if you're departing one city and you have home base fuel that's cheap, you might tanker and load as much fuel as possible, because where you're flying to might be very expensive, the next destination. So our system will say, okay, well, your home base is cheap, to load this amount of gallons in your plane, fly to the next destination and only load enough to avoid paying the ramp fee penalty. And then when you get to your third destination, load it up as much as you can and maybe skip fuel at your fourth destination. So it looks at about 1 million different scenarios and runs that and tells you exactly how much fuel to the gallon to put on the airplane. So you're not flying too heavy, but you have enough fuel to complete the mission. And that's how we really achieve savings through efficiency. Something that it would take a lot of hours to do manually, if you even could do it manually, because of the amount of mathematical calculations that are going on when it does this. So that's how we achieve optimization.
So Fuelerlinx is a marketplace. You're having integration with all the scheduling and flight planning softwares from one part, and at the same time you have most of the aviation, if not all of the aviation fuel resellers on the other side. And then you have the clients. They can plan their purchases from the fuel resellers they have agreements with, or the others you can recommend to them. So it's truly a multi-sided marketplace, which is very famous of not being easy to build and to grow. I'm sure you have faced many challenges in this journey on how to bring all the parties to the marketplace at the same time. Can you share some of the most difficult challenges you faced?
Well, it's interesting. I can go back in 2008. I started the company in San Francisco. I moved up to San Francisco. My sister was up there. We worked on it together. We had one or two employees, a developer and an assistant, and we were on a very a bootstrap budget. So we worked at this office building called Rocket Space. It's where you rent a desk. It's like WeWork, but WeWork is today. This was the sort of predecessor to that. And it's funny because like sitting at a desk to my left was a gentleman with 12 employees, and he was trying to do a ride sharing app in San Francisco. His name was Travis, and we would talk because he had this thing he would call GodView, where you would have it was the predecessor to Uber Cab. He was the start of Uber, and he was sitting next to me, and Rocket Space was wonderful because the gentleman who started it would bring in different entrepreneurs that would come in, and we would have these social like appetizer nights on Thursday, and these very famous entrepreneurs, Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Microsoft at the time, came and spoke to us, and we were trying to launch a system with fuel vendors that were looking at us not favorably because we were bringing transparency to the industry, and we had a couple of fuel vendors that were participating because we had customers that were demanding it, so they were satisfying their customers, and we were trying to not get crushed, right? We were trying to stay under the radar but be relevant. And Ballmer, when he spoke to us, he said, if you try to address something that's maybe too much to take on, when you're a young company or you're a couple of people and you try to take on too much, you'll get crushed. Your competition that's more established will destroy you. So try to imagine yourself as a small pebble surrounded by big boulders that are going to crush you at any minute. And if you can systematically and strategically grow, just take a little bit at a time and establish yourself and sustain, you can, that pebble becomes a rock, and that rock grows bigger and bigger, and soon you become big enough where these boulders can't crush you. And that's when you can make your bold moves and you can start taking more risk. If you take too much risk early on, you can often get crushed. And I thought it was a very interesting speech, and we applied that at Fuelerlinx, where we really relied on the loyalty of our customers, because we represented the little guy, and we had a lot of flight departments that recognized that and really backed us and went to bat for us. And they were the ones that were calling vendors saying, you need to participate in this program or else we're not going to buy fuel from you. And we had fuel vendors that, I mean, it happened twice, where two major fuel vendors issued a letter to all of their customers saying, you're not allowed to put your pricing into Fuelerlinx. Stop it. It's not allowed. And we got cease and desist letters saying we couldn't do it. And we did. We obeyed it. denied. If they don't want their pricing in there, that's their business. So we did. We cut them out. We didn't lose. On both instances, we never lost one customer because they looked at that and they said, well, there are other vendors out here selling the same amount of fuel. If you don't want to participate and make our life easier, we're not going to do business with you. So it really helped boost us. It backfired on the vendors. And those vendors eventually came around and saw the value that we weren't trying to put them out of business. We were trying to, and we don't. We actually bring a lot of new customers to vendors that normally would never get them. So sales personnel at fuel companies love us because they make money in their sleep because our system is always working and dispatching, and they don't have to call and do touch points all the time with flight departments. It's a marketplace. It's a true marketplace. So the best advice is be strategic, be smart, don't take off more than you can chew. Do that when you're established.
It's very interesting story how customer loyalty from the value they get from the software, from the marketplace, force suppliers to come on board. So in average, do you have a figure of how much percentage does your customer save when they subscribe to Fuelerlinx?
It varies on the size of the flight department, but the average across all of our user base is about 25% savings on fuel. If you combine tankering and we use a benchmark of the highest price contract fuel vendor on a field compared to the lowest, and our system allowing you to take on, instead of one or two vendors, taking on 10, 20 vendors. We have 74 different fuel vendors that participate in our marketplace. We have about 27 different scheduling systems that integrate into it. We have 4 flight planning engines that push profiles for us to calculate tankering flights. It varies, but if you were to take about $100,000 average monthly spend, we save about $25,000 on average for a flight department.
That's a serious number. I'm sure they appreciate that.
It's a serious number.
It can turn into profit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It does, and that's why we have very little attrition. Most of the users have been with us for many, many years. We don't really lose customers unless the flight department closes down. But we have very loyal customer base.
If you have very little churn, as you mentioned, this means the value of the company is increasing by the day.
I hope so. I hope so.
We're going to come to this question about valuation a little soon later. I want also to discuss with you sustainable aviation fuel. This is an area where our operators are focusing on now. They want to buy fuel which help them reduce carbon emissions compared to the traditional fuel. Does Fuelerlinx assess them in that area?
Yeah, we do. We have a interactive fuel planning map in the software, usually used for tech stops. If a flight department needs to find a tech stop and a proximity fuel, to find the optimized routing, we highlight SAF locations that sell sustainable aviation fuel. We also are building, it's in development, it's not live, but it is a current development project where we are calculating, we have the formula to calculate carbon emissions. And with that, a flight department can run an analytics report in our system to see exactly what their carbon footprint is, and then buy offsets from different companies like 4Air or whoever they want to buy an offset. We're not getting involved in selling carbon credits. It's not our business. So we're just providing the data to make it easy for someone to reconcile that. So we have a secondary product called FBOLinx. Yes. It's a analytics product we put into FBOs. It also has we install hardware there, 300 nautical mile ADS-B flight tracking antenna that ties into our user base, so we alert FBOs when an aircraft is inbound. It also allows an FBO that sells sustainable aviation fuel to push that price directly into the marketplace. So if they aren't getting representation from a contract vendor, or they need to distribute the fact that they have SAF fuel, we have right now about, we just launched it in November. It's a new product, but we have about, I think, 86 FBOs participating right now, and we're talking to some major chains to have them come on board with it as well. So it's still a very young product, but it seems to be getting good traction.
It's good you mentioned Fuelerlinx, because I'm sure when you started Fuelerlinx, many of the FBOs were working in the manual way. They receive inquiries for fuel prices by email. They have to respond by emails. And this, frankly, doesn't work with a marketplace concept. So you went out and you ventured to establish Fuelerlinx, which is a CRM, a customer relationship management software, which allow FBOs to manage leads, to dispatch prices into the system and communicate with their customers effectively by sending prices, receiving fuel orders, sending release, and getting paid in one interface. So how was the reaction of the FBO marketplace? How was the acceptance of the system from their side?
Well, that's an interesting question, because when we launched the product, we have to be very careful. We have to walk a very fine line. Our intent is not to introduce a pricing portal that bypasses contract fuel. Our philosophy is an FBO operates with contract fuel relationships that bring them in leads and very effectively, but they also have direct relationships with maybe tenants or other frequented flight departments that come in. They're very loyal. So operating under that, we designed a product that plays well with everybody, and bringing in the hardware antenna and giving access to our marketplace and giving data to an FBO where they can look at exactly how effective their pricing is, and it gives them insight to how to adjust that pricing to grab more market share, was received very well. It's been received very well. And normally a savvy general manager at an FBO will take out a pair of binoculars, look at other tail numbers on the field that are taxing to their competition, and write down that tail number, and then they'll look up who's in that aircraft and maybe send them an email or give them a call. It's very tedious and very hard to manage. With digitizing that process, our antenna allows us to see when an aircraft lands, where it taxis to. We geofence the property, so if it runs into that FBO's geofence and shuts down, we record it as a successful capture. If that aircraft taxis across to another part of the field and they're not subscribing to our Fuelerlinx product, we allow that FBO to click on that aircraft, and we integrate into AMSAT data, where that data then pulls up of who's inside the airplane. They can add it to the CRM function of the software, establish a price they want, a seduction price, I call it, to seduce that aircraft to come over to them the next time. And it doesn't rely, an FBO manager doesn't have to constantly pick up the phone or send an email to do this. Once they capture that user, they're in the system, and that pricing then is 24/7 pushing every time they query something. So it's a very effective, well-received product. We priced it very low. If we calculate about $1.50 average margin per gallon that an FBO makes into plane, and an average upload of 500 gallons, our users tend to upload more because they're larger aircraft that use us. But let's just use a 500 gallon average. They can break even on the software if we send them only 6 fuelings a year. So 6 aircraft come in and fuel with them in 1 year, they break even for the year. So we didn't price it very expensively. And so it's very well received so far. We'll see what happens.
It's very interesting. I'm sure it will continue. Actually, you have built a very interesting and very valuable business, because you're relying on business models which is very famous to be valuing the companies at a very high price. The marketplace is a very valuable business model, and the subscription at the same time is very valuable. Combining them together in one business means the business is truly valuable financially, as well as in the position in the marketplace. But Larry Page, the founder of Google, recently said that if money were our only motivator, we would have sold Google long time ago, and we would be laying on the beach now. And as I know you, I know that you received many offers to acquire Fuelerlinx, but you denied them. What motivates you to continue working in Fuelerlinx?
Oh, yeah, I probably get approached by either private equity or venture capital, or realistically 3 or 4 times a week, I get constant emails or calls. Especially right now, it's a very hot market. Private equity is trying to put its money because they can't put it into a bank, and they can't put it into stock markets because of inflation. So they're trying to invest in businesses. So I don't know how long that's going to last, but we'll see. But what motivates me? It's funny you mentioned the Larry Page quote, because the sound bite is retiring on the beach, right? Everyone says, well, go drink, go hang out on the beach. But if we go on a vacation, there's only so many days of the beach before you just get sick of it. Maybe 2 days and I'm done and I need to go do something else. It's so boring. So,
yes.
It's not the money. The money's great. The money supports my wife and child and pays my employees and, allows me to live somewhat comfortably. But it's really the hunt, right? It's the game. It's the building of something and a legacy. That's the motivator, I believe. And the entrepreneurial spirit, 100% from my family. My uncle, my dad, my grandfather, my other uncle, all immigrated from Denmark. They started a business in retail gasoline, USA Petroleum. And that spirit has always been instilled in me. I didn't think growing up I would ever become an entrepreneur, but I think it's coded into my soul. And so there's a lot of stress that comes with it in the beginning. There's a lot of sleepless nights. You have a lot of responsibility because you have to feed these people that depend on a paycheck. So yes, there is stress, but the payoff when it works is very much worth it. And what a lot of people don't see in an entrepreneur that's built a business is all the failures that came before that business was successful. So you have to have very much a strong will. You almost have to fool yourself. You almost have to tell yourself little fibs or else you don't sleep at night sometimes, right? And you have to be optimistic and always know that this dark day is temporary and there will be a light day the following day. And the net result will be positive. And if you can stick it out, eventually you're going to hit it. If you believe in your product, if you're not selling a bad product, it really helps to have a product that people like. If you truly believe in it, I 100% believe you can make it happen. So that's the motivator.
I fully agree. Kevin, you're a truly successful aviapreneur who achieved a lot of success. And I'm sure many of the aviapreneurs listening to us would like to learn from your journey. You found a problem, a job, which is being done in a very manual and lengthy way. And you saw an opportunity, you seized that opportunity, and you built a business around it. What advice do you give to the aviapreneurs who want to follow your way, who want to find a problem, go solve the problem, build a business around it, and grow that company in a proper, professional, and profitable way?
Well, I mean, you have a very interesting thing you said about inefficiencies. If you can identify an inefficiency in something and carve out a piece of that and build something that makes someone's life easier, or you can provide value in some way and really stick with it, you have a start. The next thing that comes into play is you really have to ask yourself, is this the lifestyle you want? You have to look at where you are in life. You're like, my greatest success is my wife and my daughter. Meeting my wife and having my little daughter, who's 1.5 years old. Greatest success I've ever done. That's the most important thing to me, right? the business was my baby before that, but it's been replaced now, right? So if you're at a phase now where you have a family, you have to support that family, maybe the entrepreneurial path is not the right one because there's a lot of risk and a lot of potential failure that happens with it. So if you can take that risk and you're in the wonderful place to take that risk and go for that dream, really understand how you can identify that inefficiency and grow that without being squashed. Back to that analogy of what Ballmer said, if you can work under the radar in stealth mode and establish yourself and get a loyal following, fantastic. And the biggest thing is you have to believe in the product, you have to believe in yourself, and everyone's going to tell you no. And if you're stubborn enough to ignore them and persist, you'll be successful. There's so many, everyone for the most part can tell you how something is not going to work. Very few people can tell you how it's going to work. And you have to be that person that sees the light, that sees the angle. And then you have to figure out how to make it happen. And try not to go in a saturated industry. The nice part about aviation is it's very small. The bad part about aviation is it's very small. It's a double-edged sword. But it allows you, there's a lot of inefficiencies outside of, the jets that are manufactured. There's a lot of inefficiencies in the infrastructure that makes those jets fly. And it's ripe for entrepreneurs to come in there and solve the problem. Just try to find that. Just keep your eyes open.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the experience and the knowledge shared. I look forward to meeting you in person very soon.
And then likewise, and thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Have a great day. Thank you, fellow Aviapreneurs. We had a great time talking to Kevin today. I look forward to seeing you next week with another Aviapreneur and another episode of Aviapreneurs podcast. Have a great day.